Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review. I'm your host, Adesina, and across the table from me, friend and colleague, Mr. Mahmoud Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, welcome to the program.
As ever, glad to be here.
And for viewers, old and new, quick explanation. It's called The Week in Review because we tend to take 10 big stories from the week just gone by and we go through them in some detail. And some stories demand more of our time than others. So if you think, gosh, they're spending a lot of time on that story, why? It's because it's probably worth it, okay? So what's on the menu, I hear you ask? Well, the special prosecutor has just been sworn in to prosecute Jammeh-era crimes. Also, His Excellency, the Vice President, Mohamed B.S. Jallow, just hosted a forum for a school feeding program. Also, the Lions and the local government commissions have been sworn in. They went to the State House to take their oaths of office. Also, the First Lady's Foundation has just issued awarded 40 scholarships to students. And the former African Development Bank President, Dr. Adesina, was in the country, and he was here for the UTG's 18th convocation. And he had some very nice, warm words to say about President Barrow. Also, there's a global crisis, Straits of Hormuz. If you've been on Mars, you might have missed it, but if you're on Earth, you probably have heard about it. Israel and the United States decided to attack Iran, and not quite all hell broke loose, but certainly it provided a lot of difficulties for everybody, including for fuel. And we spoke to some taxi drivers in our locality about what this has meant for them in terms of difficulties. Also, the Gambia, we marked World Press Freedom Day, but it hasn't been all sweetness and light. Yes, there are rankings that we've improved on, but also people had concerns about some of the laws that still exist and some of the laws that they were intending to bring in. And the World Bank had this doomsday scenario for Banjul regarding climate change and the impact of climate change. They said that Banjul could be submerged, underwater, that is, by 2050, 2050, okay? 2050, if stringent and urgent steps are not taken. Also, International Day of Nurses and Midwives was commemorated here, and we'll have a look at that. And then finally, we go next door to Senegal, where there's been a bit of a kind of vocal gymnastics, acrobatics, and a kind of back and forth between President Diomaye Faye and his Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, the man who once saw Diomaye Faye as his protege. Things are not going as smoothly as they probably both hoped. So these are the stories. So first story, Special Prosecutor Martin Hackett has just been sworn in, and he went to the State House and he gave the oath of office, and here is some of what went down. Have a look and have a listen.
I, Martin Hackett, do swear that I will execute the functions of the office of Special Prosecutor without fear or favour, affection or ill will, according to the Constitution and other laws of the Gambia. The centre of this work are the victims, survivors, families and communities who have waited many years for truth, justice and accountability. Their dignity, safety and confidence must remain central to every decision taken. The process must listen to them, respect them, and ensure that they are not forgotten.
Let us perceive justice not only as a legal imperative, but also as a foundation of lasting peace and national unity.
Lasting peace, national unity from His Excellency the President there, and we heard Martin Hackett saying, you know, what it means, and the people that he will be focusing on, and the people he will be putting at the center of, the Special Prosecutor's Office's work. This comes in the same week when a Jammeh loyalist had said that we should forget about prosecution and it should be about reconciliation, but it seems as if things are moving, finally.
Absolutely. When he talked about justice there, I wish that sort of he had quoted the Wole Soyinka line, that justice being the first condition of humanity. It goes to the very heart of things.
It does.
Without justice, you're not going to have peace.
Yeah,
so this is it, how we moved on from documenting abuses to RRC, wasn't it?
Yes.
Maybe this is the next most significant thing we've taken in delivering accountability.
Well, this is it. I mean, and it's a model that's been replicated elsewhere. Rwanda, famously, South Africa, Sierra Leone. Previously, all of them, and in the case of Sierra Leone, very few prosecutions actually, in spite of recommendations that were sort of put forward. There was a special court, and yes, that one sat for quite a while, and then eventually they were, but it wasn't immediate, and it took a while, and they were very long-winded, and in fact, some of the people who were facing the court died before, Fode Sanko, infamously, and the head of the Kamajos, Sam Hinga Norman, both of them died in custody whilst the trials were still ongoing. Now we're moving swiftly, so this kind of signals the kind of activation really of the Special Prosecutor's Office, and it seems as if now he has to recruit staff, but initially he'll be based within the Ministry of Justice.
Absolutely. I mean, we always complain about capacity in this form or another.
Sure.
Look at the cases in Switzerland, in the US, in Germany, so quick.
Yeah,
They dealt with that very quickly, as it were. But we are not quite sort of on that level.
Well, this is, and in case anybody's wondering, we're talking about this cases involving Gambians.
That's the cases involving Gambians, connected to Jammeh era persecutions, be it Usman Sonko in Korea, Switzerland, Korea in the America. US, and then Bailo in Germany, stuff like that. So it was always going to take time. And now we've got this, and even with this, who provided the funding?
This is it.
International donors. So, but it doesn't matter much in that way. Things are moving on, even though we understand the danger. What is if in the future something happens in these societies, because everything depends on geopolitical relationships, and then they pull out their funding. So
and then could it collapse?
And then what happened? So granted with all of that. So now this is it. We've reached this point. He sort of pledged that the office that he's going to head will be impartial, independent, and it will be victim-centered, just as he said there. So we'll see how sort of things pan out, as it were.
And Hackett, of course, has previous, as they say, 30 years of experience in this kind of region, and of course, Special Tribunal for Lebanon, and people can go and check. He led that, he was the lead trial counsel, and the one for Kosovo. The war crimes in Kosovo, he also led the prosecution. So it's quite a heavy hitter, a heavyweight, and I guess that's why those who've provided the funding have been willing to provide the funding, because they think, okay, this is somebody who has quite a good record in this sort of thing, and we think he's the ideal person to lead this.
Absolutely, and even in Africa, in Uganda.
Yeah, quite.
So this is the key, isn't it? That sort of credibility. Can you imagine if we had chosen a Gambian, even though, just as you said earlier, some people saying, well, on the one hand, let's bury the hatchet. And others were saying, we should have been a Gambian, that sort of thing. Can you imagine if it had been a Gambian? Everybody will look, was any member of your family affected? So we'll be looking for all sorts of things.
This is it. And also,
so it was going to be tricky.
This is it. And also, if you had a Gambian leading it, and they had a family here, would people be leaning on that person's family to say, put pressure on your relative not to go so heavy, not to go so hard? So all those considerations were kind of brought on board and saying, we need to consider these things because it's a potential reality.
Absolutely. So that's a valid point, a very good point. The other bit, the people who say, let's bury the hatchet, we're sort of reopening old wounds, that kind of thing. I said, how convenient. And every so often you hear Yahya Jammeh's videos that he releases would sort of mention or would lean towards that sort of thing. Then, of course, I'm bound to say, how convenient for you, isn't it? The one who was wielding the hatchet, suddenly you don't have the power to wield it anymore. Of course, it is convenient to say, let's bury the hatchet.
Exactly, the very hatchet.
Let's bury the hatchet.
Yeah,
no,
right.
we cannot do that.
That's right.
Just as we said earlier, justice
sure.
in a society for the sake of the country.
Well, indeed.
We cannot bury the hatchet.
We cannot. And for, kind of survivors and victims and relatives of victims, for them, that kind of convenient burying of the hatchet is it's a non-starter.
Absolutely. It is in the interest of all of us.
Yeah, sure.
Whether I lost a family member or whatever, for us to make sure that it works.
Yeah, quite.
Isn't it?
Well, this is
Those who deserve prosecution will be prosecuted.
Sure.
And let us be honest, with the TRRC formula,
yeah, quite.
some people would be let off
Well,
lightly.
because they recommended 69 individuals
Yes.
should be prosecuted.
This
So
is
that's quite a number.
exactly, absolutely.
Yeah.
But when you consider apparently what
These
250
Yeah.
or so either
Yeah,
killed or disappeared
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that sort of thing. So there will be certain compromises.
Sure.
So who are the people who are going to be prosecuted?
Sure.
I think when that time comes, there will be so much debate
There will be.
in here.
There will be.
So all the way throughout, there'll be so much debate. Some will be happy with what's going on, others wouldn't be, that sort of thing.
It's bound to happen because, again, I mentioned the previous ones, Rwanda, South Africa, and so on. And if you see some of the South African ones, some of the people who admitted to the most heinous were not prosecuted because that was the condition for them coming before the commission and confessing that they had done these things. And, and it then created that debate. And, the commission, of course, pushed back and said, well, had we not given them that condition, they would never have come and admitted that they did all these terrible
Absolutely.
things.
These things will always be difficult.
Yeah.
We are never going to satisfy everybody.
Indeed.
We all know that. But generally, on the whole, that's really what we can judge.
Sure.
On the whole, has it been a positive one? And sort of the most culpable, as it were, those who were giving the decisions, the powerful ones, have we prosecuted them? I think that really is important. Everybody else to learn that whilst I'm in power, I could give out all sorts of instructions, but afterwards, the world has changed so much.
It has.
You'll be caught in the net of something somewhere. Then you're not going to have peace when you leave.
This is it. And of course, Nuremberg told us that I was just following orders doesn't wash.
Only lawful orders are binding.
That's right.
If there's any principle we got from Nuremberg,
that's right.
That's for anybody in any work. My boss cannot tell me to break the law.
That's it.
It's as simple as that. Only lawful orders are binding, even though we say in the army, you have to follow orders and all of that. To a point. Now we know that to a point.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboch. Story number 2, a very different story, but a very important one. His Excellency the Vice President, Mohamed B.S. Jallow, recently hosted a forum where they talked about a national school feeding program. And it was very interesting. Have a look and have a listen.
If we are to secure sustainable development, reduce inequality, and build resilience, we must ensure that every Gambian child has access to quality education and proper nutrition. Without this, our aspirations for inclusive growth and shared prosperity cannot be realized.
Over the decades, school feeding has proven to be far more than just provision of meals. It has become a powerful tool for increasing enrollment and ensuring that learners come to school.
Today's gathering is not only a dialogue, it is a reaffirmation of our shared responsibility to ensure that every child in the Gambia has access to nutritious meals and quality education.
Mr. Mboch, there we heard from U.S. Rep, United States Department of Agriculture, are partners in this. And if people hear that, they're putting $28 million towards it, it sounds a lot. But that same Department of Agriculture is putting $240 million into Guinea and Liberia. And so they've reduced the amount they're giving here, and the slack, if we can call it that, is being taken up by the Gambian government, which has increased its contribution by more than 50%, or 50% increase on last year. which is quite interesting.
Absolutely. The way these things move, the traffic.
You were talking about,
Yes.
in another context of people pulling out their funding.
Absolutely,
and this, they haven't quite pulled out.
No,
but they've certainly reduced it and said, no, you take up the slack.
Absolutely. I mean, what's been happening recently, in recent years, we've seen what's been happening with the donor countries.
Yeah, quite.
So I think we've woken up, we've smelt the coffee by now.
Indeed.
We've woken up. But this is the key. But this is what we always talk about, Ade. For now, I'm receiving this, granted that it has reduced. But what would you do? Imagine if you didn't have this. Things would be actually worse. For me, it's not a question of receiving them, but what do you do with them? Isn't it really, in the end, that's it. So when we look at the scale of this one, we are told that, yes, 28.7 million. And then the beneficiaries, more than 63,000 for children, or the 86 schools. Granted, let's just do that. But just as you mentioned, as it were in your point, the sustainability of it.
Yeah, quite.
When I say that I prioritize this area, when you look at my budget, do I put in more money? I remember the analyst who said to me, when governments give you their rhetoric, we prioritize this area or that area, look at their budget.
So
how much money are they putting
$250 million.
Absolutely. How much is that given the scale of the problem? So put your money where your mouth is, that sort of thing. But yes, everybody could welcome this. I mean, when we were kids, the crack wit.
This is it.
When we talk amongst ourselves, people of a certain generation, we talk about the crack wit. Remember the Domada crack wit? Remember this, remember that? You used to have that.
Absolutely, from the USA. And we used to love it. But also, one of the reasons I wanted us to discuss this is because, yes, it's about feeding and it shows the kind of increased level of funding coming from the government, but it's kind of broader thing that we're showing about people, because when I used to come here under the Jammeh era, I heard a lot of talk about his focus on education, but I didn't see it in the schools I visited. And of course, when I first started visiting, there wasn't even a thing called the University of the Gambia, which of course he brought into being. But the budget for the basic education is 5.9 billion, and it's involved, extending schools, improving school infrastructure with help and from outside, and also, helping with exam fees. I was amazed, $230.9 million for WAEC exam fees. And so, this is part, of, they're not just saying that we're increasing the budget for schools, and I said not just feeding, but these other aspects as well. It shows a kind of serious intent to say, education is important, because we've seen how important it is for other countries. Countries that are doing better than us. They don't just talk about funding education and so on. They do something about it, and that seems to be what is happening.
That's it. With the feeding, we've got evidence from UN and other bodies. It increases attendance, and they're not hungry, and it could improve concentration and all of that. But we all know that attendance is just one aspect. What makes good quality education? You need other aspects as well to come together. So you need the coalescence of so many different initiatives, as it were, to come together. So we understand all of that. And I would like to think government also understands that. This is one aspect. Sometimes what we accuse them of is sort of to overpitch. You've done something good, but let's put it in context. That on its own cannot do much. If I've done something good with sort of situation A, but with situation B, C, D, I'm not doing the right thing. Sometimes it can almost seem as if I'm wasting it.
Well, this is it. And what's interesting about, if we go back to the feeding one, is that it's not just MOPSI, Ministry of It. They've got Caritas and Catholic Relief Services as helping, being implementing, kind of making it happen. Also, there's a kind of local focus now where they're trying to source food from local farmers. And so they will also benefit from this. So that's also different from, as you said, we recall the kind of stuff that we used to get imported from America and how much we enjoyed it. But this one is trying to also kind of help kind of local producers as well.
Absolutely. I think with our crack wit and there was kangaroo meat, I think we used to get help from New Zealand.
Okay.
I think we had help from New Zealand. Now with this one, See, my biggest fear when I saw that it was part of a fund by McGovern, who do, as it were, International Food for Education and
that's right.
Children's Nutrition Program, that sort of thing. Right. That was my fear. Sure. Oh my God, they will stop it soon.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, quite.
This Trumpian, as it were,
quite.
revolution. So this is the key. Sure. But absolutely, with programs like this, people from well-off families, they don't need it.
Yeah, quite. This is
we
true.
all know that.
This is true.
But you have a certain class, a certain category of people for whom it will make a massive difference. So this is the key, that we have such programs. Perhaps the worry is that the funding is not internally generated, only a tiny bit really. Government will contribute, but not that much. Everything depends on external funders. That's precarious, isn't it? Especially in the world we're living in now. Especially
the world we live in. And they're hoping that 2030 there'll be universal feeding program. And we certainly hope so. But thank you for that, Mr. Amber. Story number 3. When we did this story, I inserted the phrase that the establishment of this commission is an attempt to bring sanity to land use in the Gambia, and I stand by that. What am I talking about? Well, the Lands Commission, as well as the Local Government Commission, the members went and they received their official letters, and they were sworn in front of His Excellency, the President. Have a look and have a listen.
The newly reconstituted Land Commission takes over from a previous commission sworn in 2018, with Justice Ramon Sok maintained as chairperson under a similar mandate. Other members of the commission are Keba Njai, Babu Karambai, Abdoulaye Mane, and Julde Sise. The Land Commission is expected to investigate land ownership issues, review existing policies, and make recommendations aimed at strengthening land governance and reducing disputes.
We have been encountering numerous challenges linked to disputes, double allocations, and unregulated acquisition of land that have regretfully sown seeds of discord, torn communities apart, and hinder our progress.
As we are aware that our work will be closely watched, we will welcome that scrutiny because public trust is the most valuable asset.
Reverend Sok there, welcoming the scrutiny, Mr. Mburge, and scrutiny there surely will be. And because I used the word sanity, they said to bring clarity. And we heard His Excellency the President talk about some of the kind of disputes that I've certainly witnessed since I came to the Gambia, and it just seems to be something of a free-for-all, because it's not as if they didn't have a Lands Commission before, but this one is attempting to tighten the regulations, improve them, and also use technology in terms of mapping to make sure that every inch of the Gambia is mapped.
I thought maybe clarity brings sanity.
Indeed.
I suppose.
Indeed.
So for me, the first question I asked, this one is taking over from a previously sworn in Lands Commission in 2018. How are we to assess their achievement?
As he said, there'll be scrutiny, because that's the question that will be asked. Why do we need a new one which actually recycles, no insult intended, some of the members of the previous one?
And
which we said was effective, and he was chair.
Ramon Sok was the chair. We remember when he said that they were not getting the funding.
Indeed.
We remember that. We discussed it.
Yeah, indeed.
So that's really the issue.
So what's changed now? What's different
that's
now?
it. This institutional creations, that's fine. Yeah. But the measurable outcomes, that's really where we've been having problem. Yeah. The enforcement, that has been a problem with all of these commissions. And then people are worried about political influence.
That's right.
Would you have all the resources you need to function effectively? So the effectiveness of these bodies, that's really where the problem is. And then sometimes you have governments, they want to claim, as it were, sort of kind of kudos. They want to claim the achievement based on the establishment of these bodies, thinking that just by establishing it, oh, I'm doing good. For some of us, that's just the starting point.
And that's the question that we had sent our reporter with, but he was not able to ask because of the nature of how the thing was conducted. We wanted to ask a simple question. In 5 years from now, what would you deemed to have been the success of this commission in terms of enforcement, in terms of implementation, in terms of settling land disputes, the very things that you're mandated to do, what would count as success? They never got a chance to ask that question, but those are the things that we wanted to know.
That's the planning.
Yeah.
I should be able to answer that, as it were. Sure. So, well, probably they'll tell you, well, we're just taking over, so we will know afterwards and all the rest of it. Right. So this is the key. And even with the other one, the local government
one,
as it were, a commission to sort of standardize recruitment and that sort of things, and improve accountability, reduce political patronage, that sort of thing.
Right.
Fine,
right.
Nice on paper, but the reality of the situation, which things are just so convoluted in our societies. We are told that the social networks we have, the political networks we have, they vitiate how we run our institutions.
Indeed.
This is the fundamental problem about things. So you can tell me the rhetoric, oh, we want to be impartial, we want to be this, or we want to be that. But the reality of it, the cases I face, you know, sometimes they are so emotionally freighted with all sorts of things. There are histories. How do you deal with that? So we are finding it difficult to separate, aren't we, the private realm with the public.
Well, this is it.
The private always spills over into the public. So that means I really cannot do my job as objectively, as impartially as I would have liked. So there's a fundamental problem, I feel.
And one of the big things that came out of the local government commissions of inquiry, if anybody bothered to watch them, and they really made fascinating, was about the whole recruitment of it. And so they've said for this commission, they will oversee recruitment, promotion, and discipline of local government staff to ensure a professional workforce that is dedicated to quality service delivery. All fine words. How are they going to do it is the other thing we need to know.
Precisely. Our political system, our mindset. When I'm in a position, imagine I'm a chairperson of a commission, in all likelihood appointed by the president, I will feel that obligation. Wouldn't you? So this is really the problem. How do I separate the two? That is why institutional life is not working. Most of us, we're just there for the government. So we've confused government and the state.
Indeed.
I'm there for the state. So how do you strengthen these things? There's a crucial separation that we must make, really, for institutions to work well. Fundamentally, this is always our problem. Never mind what the law says, never mind what regulations stipulate, never mind any of that. The real world, the lived experience, somehow it makes it funny.
Makes it dodgy. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboch. Story number 4, again, a very different one, but one again to do with education. The First Lady's Foundation, the PAP Foundation, they've just recently provided scholarship for up to 40 students. Have a look, have a listen.
As a Pan-African initiative assisting underprivileged girls to access education across Africa, the Educating Linda program's annual occurrence in the Gambia since its inception in 2021 has fostered an environment where a girl's potential and future is not dictated by economic or social barriers. This year's cohort of 40 schoolgirls from grades 10 to 11 from across all regions in the Gambia received support packages that will eliminate the logistical hurdles that often lead to school dropouts. This covers uniforms, lunch and transportation money, textbooks, and essential learning materials that will ensure these girls successfully transition into key drivers of national development.
Just give me books and pads. You give me peace of mind to learn. You give me a reason to stay in school.
I promise to work hard, maintain excellence, and conduct myself in any way that honors your trust.
This support is an investment in your future, in your empowerment, and in your development and growth generally.
There's my sister, Dr. Habibatu Drame, Mr. Mboch. 40 beneficiaries, 10 from the Combos and 30 from rural areas. Interestingly, some of what they've been given, as well as $15,000, is a bicycle to ensure punctuality. And so, you know, obviously 3 sets of uniforms, essential stationery and exercise books. And we talked about feeding, and there are certain things that you need that are really crucial to make sure that you don't have worries when you go to school. And so, you know, when this came, people were saying, why 40? I said, well, they can't do 400 because you have to do it incrementally. And they're doing it with the Merck Foundation and this under the Educating Linda program. But 40 is, you know, is a decent start. And there are other initiatives. It's not the only one. That we could have done another. Will, you know, did a similar one this very week. Again, mainly girls, but I think there were 2 boys amongst them. So, yeah.
Development in the proper sense, isn't it? It's always incremental.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
we really can't help that.
You can't splash. If you don't have funds to do it for 400, why would you pretend to do it? Do it for the ones that you can see. And it could almost be a pilot scheme. Yeah.
If you could do it for 10, if I could do it for one.
That's right.
One would do it.
Indeed.
So this is what is. Yeah. It's just that you need these initiatives and other initiatives because you need the skill to really make a difference. For these 40, fantastic. They'll be so happy with it. Quite. But it's a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, it really is.
We all know that. Sure. So everything's got its just emphasis.
Yeah, indeed.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So yes, you appreciate this. Sure. It's fantastic. These women will certainly, the girls will certainly like that. Sure. But we know that we have so much to do. Yes. And just as we said earlier, this is with the Merck Foundation. Yeah. Look at the name, Educating Linda. How many people do we know around who are called Linda? So it's from outside. You would have said Educating Fatu or Awa or Ami, stuff like that, isn't it? Sure. But still the same, all the same. People are benefiting, and it helps. Have more and realize that this is just one chunk, you know, to me, one pillar out of so many pillars that we must satisfy, we must take care of for us to get the outcomes we want.
Thank you for that. And in fact, just to say, the reporter who covered this, I had to rein in her expectations by saying, because she kind of said this was going to be a game changer for the Gambia. I said, not 40 girls.
No.
You need 400 or 4,000 girls receiving this to call it that. But it's good, and we welcome it. Yeah, we have to be realistic.
Area, the true game changer would be if Gambia is generating, I don't know, maybe 60–70% of the solution. Indeed. But again, we go out maybe for 20%, 30%, but it's the other way around. Yeah. We depend more on outside than we generate from within. Sure. That will be the real game changer in the end.
100% agree. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us to story number 5. Now, if you are a commuter, I beg your pardon. Yes, I'll get onto that after the break. The former Africa Development Bank president, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, was in the Gambia, where everybody keeps calling him Adesina. And he was at the 18th UTG convocation. And as well as having a building named in his honor, he gave a very nice, colorful, vibrant, inspirational speech where he heaped praise on the president and the First Lady. Here's some of what he had to say.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, it is always a joy to come to the Gambia. And over time, I have learned something important. There are places that you visit, and there are places that stay with you. The Gambia stays with me, not just in memory, but in spirit and in heart. This country has been kind to me, and I have come to love it deeply. So standing here today, I feel at home. All the developments I see every time that I come, Your Excellency, to the Gambia, from infrastructure, from transport to energy to education, I can confidently say to you, people of the Gambia, that President Barrow is a bankable president. So let me be clear. Africa is not a dream. Africa is investable. Africa is moving to the center of global history, and it will shine so brightly. The world will look to it for direction and opportunity.
I don't want to be picky, and I love Dr. Adesina because I've followed his career for close 10, 15 years, even before African Development Bank sort of presidency, and always a positive mindset, and that's why I kind of followed him despite, you know, the slight hyperbole there about Africa will be at the center of history in our dreams. Not that we can't dream big, but nonetheless, if we come back to what he said about the president being a bankable president, of course he's a banker, and he's talking about bankable projects, the bridge, the infrastructure around the country, the roads, electricity. And so those are some of the things, because some of my colleagues were scratching their head. A bankable president? What does he mean? That's what he meant.
Absolutely. He's been what's been called the optimist in chief.
Indeed.
As it were, for Africa.
Oh, wow.
And in a way, I like that.
Yeah, that's why I said I like the guy.
In many ways, because of the narratives, the negative narratives,
that
the
you're
narratives
always
of
having to deal with.
hopelessness and that sort of thing.
Quite.
One understands that. But you said it when somebody describes us as bankable. What do we mean? Well, we are politically predictable in many ways.
Yes, yeah.
And institutionally cooperative.
Yeah, indeed.
That is the area really that we are talking about. Now, whether we are sort of economically transformative within the country, that's a slightly different matter.
Yeah, quite.
How do people feel the cost of living is going up?
That's
Our
right.
next story.
Our next story will deal with that. Absolutely.
We'll touch that.
Yeah.
And we've got corruption concerns.
Well, indeed.
How much are we doing in that area?
Sure.
Some people feel that we are not really doing much.
Sure.
With the big fish,
Sure.
we are not going for them. The middle ones and the lower end of the wrong, the lower part.
Yeah.
So there are all sorts of things to be said for that. But yes, you have to hand it to Barrow as well in some areas.
Sure.
I mean, all of us, we talk about it in the office. At home, it seems as if the electricity problem has improved markedly compared to years before. The roads, people who've not been here for a long time, when they return, they notice something.
Including somebody I was with last Thursday who hadn't been here for 18 months. She used to live here and she'd lived here for 10 years and she was shocked. She'd only been away for 18 months. And she was pointing various things. Oh, I didn't leave that. And for me, because I live here, I'd kind of taken them for granted. Yeah, including, she said she had not left a flyover at traffic light.
That's it. So stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can even see that the opposition, they're slightly sort of stumped by...
They're on the back foot with that one.
They're on the back foot.
Sure.
So they do not know how to pivot their opposition in the face of this visible, felt, tangible improvements.
Sure.
So this is the key. So one understands Adesina, Dr. Adesina, what he's talking about.
Sure.
But again, we understand the shortcomings as well.
Indeed.
One has not translated into the other.
Exactly.
We understand our situation, African situation is kind of complex, aren't we, in many ways?
Sure.
So, yes, not bad.
Not bad.
Good for...
Yes, decent marks out of 10. I won't say how much, but yeah. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us to the commercial break. And after the break, we will have 5 more stories. Join us after the break. And welcome back. In some cases, if you were with us from the beginning of the program, you are watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review. I'm Adesina, your host, and across the table, the round table, friend and colleague, Mr. Mboj, thank you for your interjections thus far. And I haven't had a word yet from the producer, Terry, hurry up. So that's a good thing. But on to story number 6. We touched on it when we talked about how do people feel about certain things. And Mr. Mboj said, we'll deal with that in our next story. And this is that next story. And we spoke to some taxi drivers about how they have been hit by the recent fuel price surge. Have a look, have a listen.
Fuel prices are climbing fast. In just a month, petrol has jumped from $98 to $112 per litre, while diesel now retails at $120 per litre, placing heavy pressure on transport operators. The state says every trip now feels like a loss.
Fuel is now around $120 per litre. We burn about 20 litres a day. that's over $2,000. In the morning, we carry patients and students, but coming back, there are no passengers. After buying fuel and paying the car owner, nothing is left.
Bobu ñu ko dundé lu metti because so jëndé 5 litres so dawé do mëna am ning ko jëndé sax.
You buy fuel, but you cannot recover the cost before it finishes. Then you refill again. We also pay about $3,500 in yearly documents. Meanwhile, tricycles take most of our customers. The $15 fare is no longer sustainable. We need to invest.
Mr. Mboj, we heard there from Park Abasuso and from the taxi drivers. I'm not sure there's much to say about this. It's a global impact, but nonetheless, on the local level, we hear this all the time. And you know, some people were surprised that drivers were saying that, you know, I don't own this vehicle, it's rented, and I have to, in Sierra Leone we call it master money. I have to give the owner a certain amount of money, and you know what's left is mine. And sometimes because of the increase in fuel prices, and that's why you see lots of taxis just parked in one spot. They're not roaming around looking for passengers until the time, like you know, end of the working day, and then they'll go out and hope to pick up commuters. So they're talking about the impact, and of course everybody's feeling it.
Absolutely, and blaming the tricycles, as he calls it.
Yeah, go ahead.
And let's be honest, with most of these things, who really bears the burden in the end is the passenger.
It's the passenger, yeah, correct.
They all started increasing. I take taxis every day.
Well,
we noticed from traffic lights, Caraba Avenue, to what we call Turntable, Bruceby Roundabout, where it used to be 25. So there was a $5 a hike.
That's right.
Just like that, $30. So perhaps the best we share the burden, but we know that mostly, perhaps 75, 80% of the burden will be borne by the passenger, not the drivers.
And so government had said, they issued a press release saying that subsidy of $500 million for up to April and May of 2026. But then if you look at petrol price, $112 per litre, up from 98. Gasoline or diesel, 120, up from 95. And kerosene, that was now at 133 per litre. So, you know, quite significant in all of those cases. And as you rightly say, the person who feels it the most is the passenger, because they will always be able to say, look, you know, you've heard, you've read the news, you've seen the news, you know, these things have gone up. We have to pass it on to you. And of course, you have to get to work.
Businesses are like that, aren't they, really? So whatever levies added to their spending, as it were, then they'll pass it on to the consumer. That's how it has really always worked. So with this subsidy, for how long? Where are we getting the money from? Are we borrowing it?
And I think that's why they've only said till the end of May.
Absolutely. So this is the key. So it all depends on how long this problem, this sort of state of Hormuz, the issues there, for how long would they last? There's just so much uncertainty. We do not know where this is heading. So this is really very difficult for every country in the world today, isn't it?
This is it. And I had to smile. And it's quite instructive that this is about Kanifing taxi drivers. And the mayor of Kanifing municipality, Talib Bensouda, added his voice to it and said, you know, I'm shocked, and this highlights our heavy dependence on imported fuel. What else can we do?
Where else?
Where else are we going to get it from? I thought it was, anyway, I'm sure he has.
Absolutely. you just can't say that.
Like,
you know, if you have a long-term strategy to wean us off.
Then bring it on.
That's a different matter. And we've been talking about this, haven't we? Energy, renewable energy, perhaps will shift us away from this dependence on
That's right.
That's right.
But thank you for that. And so story number 7, we recently marked here in the Gambia and globally World Press Freedom Day. And as I said in the intro, right at the top of the program, it wasn't all sweetness and light, because people here have some concerns about some legislation that's still on the books and some legislation that was proposed. Have a look, have a listen.
26th World Press Freedom Index released by Reporters Without Borders on April 30th. The country ranked 46 out of 180 globally and 8 in Africa, highlighting significant progress.
We remain fully committed to safeguarding.
And to I did that. I included a bit ironically about safeguarding press freedom because, of course, he's the minister who's tried to bring in this new legislation that I mentioned. But, of course, there was a global theme, but we then localized the theme. And the theme in Gambia was honoring our legends, defending our freedom. And that paid tribute to Data Haidara and Chief Ibrahim Amane. But at the same time, there was cause for celebration. Our rise on the World Press Freedom Index, up to 46 in the world and 8th in Africa. So, as I said, there are some things to celebrate. We're celebrating.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody, I suppose, that the staunchest critics would concede this, just as we talked about earlier, the infrastructure, some of these developments, the improvements we've been seeing. Sure. Same with press freedom. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
oh my God, some of us who lived here during Jammeh's time, we know.
Yeah,
I mean, you wouldn't dare speak openly, honestly. One couldn't do that. You had to always watch over your shoulder.
Yeah,
so that really made it a very low threshold.
Yeah.
For Barrow to surmount.
Indeed.
That was always going to be easy.
Sure.
So now, given where we are, what are the new dangers?
Oh, this is it.
So this proposed
the
sort of licensing, as it were, the
yeah.
licensing for online providers and all
that's right.
The whole world, we all know that now we face this new danger of social media. How do you deal with it without compromising, as it were, freedom of expression? So we face new dangers. I've stopped really comparing Barrow to Jammeh. We've moved beyond that. So one must focus on the new dangers we face with this government.
And I think, as you rightly say, we have to move on, and we'll see where this one goes. But thank you for that, Mr. Amborch. Story number 8, before producer yanks us off this. World Bank report, and it had some scary statistics regarding the Gambia, but specifically regarding Banjul, the capital, about the likelihood that it could become submerged because of its, how low level it is to sea level, and 2050. They said it could become submerged. Have a look, have a listen.
The Country Climate and Development Report is not just a technical report. It's one that is meant to really show how opportunities and risks can be taken on board and to reflect each other, so opportunities can really be brought to the fore if the country acts early.
The report also stresses the economic implications of climate change, warning that without action, it could hinder poverty reduction and significantly impact national productivity.
Looking at the way the climate impact is aggravating, if you do not do anything, no action is taken, here to 2030 we will lose, or even closer to that, we will lose the entire Banjul. And then that's scary, but it's saying if no action is taken.
This reinforces the need for inclusive policies, including adapting social protection and targeted support to vulnerable populations.
The report identifies key sectors such as agriculture, tourism, energy, and infrastructure as critical areas for intervention, while also highlighting opportunities for green growth and job creation.
Green growth, job creation, Mr. Amborch. If you're sitting in Wisconsin, Idaho, and you hear Banjul could be under, you're like, who cares? We care. And we're the ones who should be not only making a noise about it, but doing something about it, because it matters to us. It doesn't matter to the geezer in Wisconsin, Idaho, where, if there is such a place.
At all, for some of us, my hometown. Can you imagine? Sooner or later, my grandchildren. There's no hometown.
There's no home for them.
That's all gone.
That's the seriousness of it.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Atlantis.
Banjul
is about to be submerged.
In
the world, around the world, given the existential problem we face right now, perhaps a good number of communities might go that way.
Well, indeed, yes.
And our vulnerability. I understand that we're ranked 151 out of 181. So we are extremely vulnerable. What do you do? I once heard Usman Silla, former National Assembly member for Banjul North, saying that, well, are we going to put Banjul on stilts, as it were? It's important to know what studies say, what is the most viable option we should go for, what can we do, and then we seriously engage with that. because the consequences, we will all have been dead.
Yeah, sure.
This is the thing when you are in leadership. You'll be taking certain decisions that would affect others. It wouldn't be you. We will all have been dead.
Indeed.
So we need to be serious and be honest to posterity.
Yeah.
What do we do? 2050, that's what? 24 years from now?
Yeah.
So
it's not that long.
That's serious.
It is serious.
But we know that in history, we've had that sort of thing all the time.
Well, indeed.
And whole society is submerged in all sorts
well, that's right. And some that have been at threat have kind of been the world leaders, the Netherlands, for example, in how to combat this sort of thing. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Story number 9, our penultimate story. International Day of Nurses and Midwives was recently commemorated. And at the commemoration, there were some interesting things that were said, and we were there to hear it. Have a look, have a listen.
Nurses and midwives remain on the front line. They are the bridge between healthcare system and the community those systems serve. Without nurses and midwives, healthcare system cannot function the way they should.
Wives.
We are saying we want to stay in this country and work and build the nation. Nobody will build it for us, but we want to have a dignified, a good standard house to live, a good salary to educate and take care of our families, and then when we are sick, we have a health system that can take care of us as we are giving back.
You work long hours, respond to emergencies, comfort families during difficult times, and continue serving even under pressure. Yet, though your commitment and resilience, countless lives are saved every day.
The second speaker mentioned about we want to stay in our country. And this is something that I was aware of when we did a kind of survey of West African nurses who were working in the United Kingdom. Almost every hospital you go to now, there are more West African nurses than any other. It's quite remarkable, in London certainly. But a lot of them had said that if conditions had been right, I'd rather stay in my own country next to my family and so on, because yes, money is good, but it's not everything if you're missing everything else. And so on the day, we honor and we recognize the work that midwives and nurses do.
They are the foundation of our primary health care. A lot of people, we are told, when they go to these clinics and wherever, you don't see doctors.
Yeah, quite.
It's really these nurses, and these are the people you're going to meet.
Sure.
What she said there, or we was a gentleman, all these conditions you want to meet, it is not going to happen, sir. Doctors, teachers will have something to say about that. What does enough mean? What will give you dignity? I do not know. We have a poor economy. Anybody in any level, at any level, your pay, maybe if you're in the private sector, you know what I mean? You know, your boss has decided to pay you the salary. In the public sector, there's just so much that one can do. The country is not rich. It is made worse by public sector stealing and all of that. The same people who will come and claim all sorts of things, yet behind the scenes they're doing all sorts of wrongdoing, you know, something untoward. So let us be honest with ourselves. For a very long time, this has been the problem. How many people have we had, you know, with the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital? We once had a minister say, oh, they are stealing everything. So the contradictions. This is really what's the problem with our society, the contradictions. I will come on a public platform, be saying all sorts of wonderful things. Behind the scenes, I'm doing all kinds of rubbish. So one understands what's going on. But we as a people, if we do not change in certain ways, the nurses will not get what they want. The teachers will not. So there are many public sector jobs, then it wouldn't work. We're not going to see it. So there's a structural issue we need to fix, isn't it?
I don't think anybody's going to argue with you on that. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. We all see it, and we see it every day. And that brings us to our final story. And we go next door, as in Senegal, where anybody who's my age or Mr. Mboj's age has probably seen this coming. What am I talking about? The spat between the president and the prime minister. Have a look, have a listen.
A charismatic opposition figure with strong support among Senegal's youth had been barred from contesting the presidency due to legal challenges. In response, he endorsed Faye as a surrogate candidate, a move that ultimately propelled Faye to power. Following his election, Faye appointed Sonko as Prime Minister, consolidating what appeared to be a strategic partnership at the helm of government. Their party won support by promising major reforms such as fighting corruption, improving governance, and limiting foreign influence, ideas that appeal to citizens frustrated by inequality and political stagnation. Journalist on Saturday, he pointed out that the sacrifices which resulted in deaths, injuries, and imprisonments were not made for the sake of any one man, but for the very essence of the project. Despite their shared origins, fissures have begun to emerge within the leadership. Reports of disagreements over coalition management and approaches to debt restructuring have surfaced in recent months. The President's remarks appear to signal a broader attempt to reassert authority and clarify the hierarchy within the executive branch.
Mr. Mboj, as I said in the intro to that, anybody who's slightly over, kind of older than kind of 35 probably saw this coming. And we mention this because in the lead up to their eventual success, there was a lot of debate in our newsroom where a lot of them are under 30. And they saw this as an unbreakable and an unshakable partnership, to which I said, without apology, nonsense. Politics and power do strange things to people. You will see over time. I didn't have long to wait, Mr. Mboj.
I spoke to people in their 50s. They were telling me the same thing. Oh, this is different.
Yeah.
These two, they're so close, they're so that. Let's be honest, political naivety.
Yeah, indeed.
Some of us, we lived through, I mean, Sankara and Blaise Compaoré.
Yeah.
We've seen this all over.
Yeah, okay.
The pattern is this. In opposition, it is easy to whitewash, to paper over the cracks.
Yeah, quite.
In power, the dynamic of opposition is different from the dynamic in power.
Totally.
Because when you're in power, not least, you may disagree on policy.
Yeah, quite.
Something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Nobody's being selfish,
Yeah,
nobody's
quite.
being whatever,
Yeah, quite.
but just you honestly disagree on policy.
Yeah.
If I'm the president,
Sure.
well, I'm going to follow mine. I'm your boss.
Yeah, quite.
What did we see here?
Yeah.
With our president and the godfather.
Well, indeed.
That sort
Double.
of thing.
Yeah,
So
quite.
this is the nature of power.
It is.
So for me, this is just normal.
Yeah.
Everybody's making so much out of it. To me, it's just normal.
Yeah.
This is the normal run.
That's it. And
of
as
things.
I said,
History is replete.
well, indeed.
this
And
sort
as I
of
said,
thing.
we saw it coming. And in the case of Compaoré and Sankara, these are people who they weren't just best friends. They grew up in the same house.
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, he was adopted by Sankara's mother and brought up as her own. And so, you know, they couldn't be closer than brothers. And yet he had him killed.
the relationship that sort of survived this,
Yeah.
I use in Britain, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. To some extent, it seemed to work.
Yeah, quite,
but again,
until
apparently they had agreed that at some
certain
point you will leave, I will come in.
Sure.
You see, without that provision,
Sure.
there's nothing here you do not know.
Yeah, quite.
So, normal. These things are normal.
Normal. Thank you for that.
It's healthy.
It's healthy and it's the usual. So
It's the usual.
next time it happens, please don't be surprised. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And to you, the viewers and the listeners who heard this on the radio, thank you for viewing and thank you for listening. Until we come your way again next week. Goodbye.